This isn't just the end of our world, it's the end of almost every world in the 616. But Jonathan Hickman was definitely not afraid to kill a lot of heroes in this particular comic book when the superheroes need to be doing something spectacular, and it needs to look so cool because it's got to sell the moment. Esad Ribić's art steps up to the plate. Marvel just did something that felt like it was impossible in 2025 or even 2024. They made a crossover comic book series that didn't suck. Normally, when you get these big crossover books, it's to sell toys or some kind of mashup line, or maybe celebrate a movie that's coming up featuring characters that aren't even the Avengers. But Aliens versus Avengers breaks all of Marvel's rules and kind of proves, as an outlier, that even today, Marvel is still capable of making great comic books when they kind of get out of the way and let their creators cook. Jonathan Hickman and Esad Ribić make epic comics together. Usually whenever you see a Marvel or DC pair up with another existing big IP like Aliens, you kind of expect to see a half-baked story with decent enough writing and art that works to sell the book. This is not that type of crossover. Hickman is a genius at world building, and Marvel gave him the keys to do what he does best. And that is big, epic scale storytelling. And that is exactly what you get in Aliens versus Avengers, so it's actually wrapped up last week. You've got Jonathan Hickman, an amazing comic book writer, probably Marvel's only A-lister left. And then you've got comic book artist Esad Ribić, who is an absolutely phenomenal visual storyteller, back together once again. Obviously, they already have done Secret Wars together. And not surprising when you take a Jonathan Hickman, who built up basically the modern Avengers mythos, or at least finished it off at Marvel Comics, and that's what people are used to. He kind of goes big. He made this an enormous story, and this does feel like the good things that can happen at Marvel Comics when they stop micromanaging. You get the hands off and you let the creators do the good work, because you actually have an A-list all-star creative team together working on two enormous fan favorite franchises and not doing it all kind of by the number. Of course, we know great creators really don't mean anything if Marvel saddles them with a really stupid concept. Thankfully, they didn't this time. Making this an old man Avengers type story instead of just throwing some aliens at the current Avengers was a great choice. This isn't just the end of our world, it's the end of almost every world in the 616. The galactic scope elevates the story beyond a simple Earth invasion into something that feels genuinely apocalyptic and personal at the same time. And I fully expected when they announced Aliens versus Avengers, even with Jonathan Hickman, that it was going to be very paint by numbers. Aliens come to Earth and the Avengers fight them and likely defeat them in the end. That is not what they did here. They threw it into the future after the engineers and the Davids have basically started going through and destroying all the outlying planets and worlds within the Marvel 616. And you get to see it on such a grand scale. And that's really what makes Jonathan Hickman the creator that he is, that he's so good at world building. In this case, most of these worlds were already built, so he was world destroying one after another. You're seeing what's happening to the Inhumans. You're seeing what's happening with the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. You're seeing what's happening, with the Shi'ar empire and all these things. And eventually, it's going to make its way back to Earth, who have thankfully, until the time that this comic book starts, been able to hold off the xenomorph threat, mostly led by the Avengers, but it has not been without a lot of failure. But there is one last hope. One group of Avengers left, still trying to save the Earth, the pockets of civilization that are out there fighting against the xenomorph threat. And this is something that is tailor-made for Jonathan Hickman, and he didn't do it the easy way. He did everything the hard way, but he made it work every single time. And it is, quite frankly, an amazing concept for Aliens versus Avengers. I don't think there's another writer out there that would have come up with something like this if they got the Aliens versus Avengers gig. Now, of course, the concept can be great, but if the execution isn't good, but you and I know that there are a lot of great concepts out there that have been bungled over the years, and execution is everything. And that's where Aliens versus Avengers really stands out. Esad Ribić's artwork receives widespread acclaim for its cinematic quality and moody, awe-inspiring art. His painterly style perfectly captures both the horror elements of Aliens and the epic scope of Marvel heroes. The art style is perfect for this type of horror story where the emotion of the characters and the scars they have need to be shown. And Esad Ribić absolutely owns this book from the very first page to the very last page. When things need to be grim and dark and unsettling, Esad Ribić nails it every single time. When the superheroes need to be doing something spectacular and it needs to look so fucking cool because it's got to sell the moment, Esad Ribić's art steps up to the plate. When there's a big character death or something hugely emotional happening with the characters. They're making a decision that they don't want to have to make because this world is so screwed up. Esad Ribić sells every single emotion of the characters with the facial expressions that they're having in there. And this is visual storytelling at its finest. You get amazing visuals like the intergalactic empire of Wakanda ziplining down to the surface of Mars to go fight these xenomorphs. You get to see the really big, weird, sinister xenomorph that you knew had to happen because it's fucking sinister. He's such an asshole. And what he does when he sees what these xenomorphs are capable of, and the fact that they kind of change and adapt depending on the host that they use, is absolutely awe-inspiring. So many cool visuals in this comic book. Esad Ribić was unequivocally the very perfect choice for this comic book. And in many cases, amazing art like this could have been completely wasted on a very flat paint-by-numbers story. A crossover that feels forced. A crossover that feels like they're doing the crossover for the sake of doing a crossover. But this is actually seamless integration. Fans praised how Hickman found really fun ways to Avengerize aliens and alien up Avengers. Without forcing the crossover, the integration feels natural rather than contrived. This transforms from a simple alien battle to a grand existential conflict through Hickman's deep exploration of alien lore and the sinister threat posed by the David 8 synthetics. And by the end, you're just like, I can't believe he was able to do that so seamlessly in just 4 issues. It feels like this should have taken a year to really explain and make sense with a different amount of ways that he ended up tying the two universes together. But he does it so well, and everything just made so sense. You're along for the ride. And if you're an Aliens fan, it feels like a badass Aliens comic book. If you're an Avengers fan, it feels like a badass Avengers comic book, and it all works together. And if you're like me, you're an Aliens and an Avengers fan, you're like, yes, thank you very much. This is exactly what I was hoping for, or really couldn't hope for. But every once in a while, they do deliver a crossover like this, and you're like, wow, they still are capable of some pretty amazing storytelling, and incorporating this Alien franchise into the Avengers was absolutely perfect. And in the end, the real test of all this stuff, the amazing art, you got a great team, you have a really good concept, you've seamlessly integrated the universes, but do people care? Do you care when you read the story? Are you emotionally invested in the stakes? And that's where this series really hits the hardest. The series achieves a perfect blend of xenomorph terror and superhero melodrama. It's basically capturing everything frightening from the Alien franchise while establishing a unique story using older Avengers facing their most dire challenge. The emotional weight comes from heroes who have already given everything, now facing something that might actually end them. And I will give you a few spoilers here, nothing specific, but Jonathan Hickman was definitely not afraid to kill a lot of heroes in this particular comic book. And when you finally see some of your favorite heroes show up, you are absolutely brought in. It grabs you by the collar and it rips you through the page and says, you're going to care about this moment because it's cool, it's fun, we set it up, and the stakes couldn't be any higher. And it only gets more dramatic from there as the numbers whittle down and the places that they can turn to become less and less. And they eventually end up on Mars where the X-Men have settled. And you see what Sinister has done to some of those X-Men. You see the ones that are the rogue elements that have made it through. And you realize most of these characters probably aren't going to make it to the end. And when you see this really enormous battle at the end where the Avengers and the X-Men basically are teaming up, or at least what's left of them, the last stand that they have, and the characters doing what they can, seeing the way that they interact with the xenomorphs, see which ones are very vulnerable, which ones are less vulnerable. You just can't stop turning it, because by that time, Jonathan Hickman and Esad Ribić have fully emotionally invested you in the story. You believe in the stakes, and you want to see what's going to happen to these heroes. You want to know who's going to survive, and you want to know how this is all going to end. But it is proof that Marvel can still make great comic books when they get out of their own way, when they actually focus on storytelling, giving people a reason to show up to their comic book shop every single month and invest in a story. In 4 issues of Aliens versus Avengers is a fantastic reminder of why we fell in love with these characters and universes in the first place. Hopefully people go out there and buy the series. Hopefully they go get the back issues. Hopefully they go support the trade and let Marvel Comics know that this is what we want. We don't need more depressed Spider-Man. We don't need whatever there is that they're trying to do with the X-Men. We just want quality, awesome superhero comic book storytelling. We aren't getting that enough from Marvel, but every once in a while, they present something like this. It's not agenda-driven garbage. It's just great storytelling with some of the best creators in comic books today. And if you do want to support more coverage of comics that actually deserve your money right here on the channel, you do need to back me on Patreon. Your support helps me find the good stuff in an industry drowning in mediocrity. Thank you for watching, and go buy some comics worth reading today.